sorry. Mr. Chairman, on the page 7 on the last page of the minutes, this had to do with the zoning change. It said all were in favor. I believe I was opposed.
I do recall that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on page number 5, under the application for West Greenville residences, it states that Michael Mullen stated his experience working with VIDOT reviewing archaeological permits. Also was requesting information from the, I'd like to add that in my discussion that evening, I was requesting information from the applicant on the applicability of state permits for historical and archaeological issues.
Understood, and I do recall that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or proposed changes? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? The ayes have it. I was remiss before we began in terms of the emergency and evacuation. In case of emergency, there are 2 main exits outside the chambers. The first is to the left side of the stage, up the stairs through the doorway, and down the stairway out of the back side of the town hall. The second is out of the back of the chambers to the exit doorway, to the stairway out the front of the town hall. The men's facilities are through the back of the chambers, past the stairway and around the corner on the right. The ladies' facilities are through the back door of the chamber, straight up the stairs and on the left. Please do not use the elevator in times of emergency. Next on the agenda was old business, but there was a request to take the sand trace, which is new business, out of time. It's a request for an extension, and we'll agree to hear that. So the next matter is the sand trace, request for extension of final plan approval, comprehensive permit application, and major land development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill Landry, representing the Simonelli family. Happy holidays. This project has gone through the full cycle master plan, preliminary plan, final plan approval. This is the first, this is the request for the by right 1-year extension for the filing of the final plat. The preliminary plan decision was recorded last January. Their site work has started on the project, and we do expect to be filing the plat shortly without the need for further extension.
Any questions from any members of the board? Any discussion from members of the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion to grant the extension.
So, second.
All in favor? Aye. All not in favor? The ayes have it.
Thank you. Good night.
The next matter is old business, West Greenville residents, ID 2313, public hearing, comprehensive permit, application, major land development, master plan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, again, Tim Kane, representing Adler Properties. We were before you last month in November. Subsequently, we had a site visit, and I think I saw pretty much all of you there. Hopefully that helped you address some of your concerns and questions. We have renamed the project The Residences at Longhouse, given the historic nature of the structure on there, and you'll see it on the plans. And Mr. Casali has made some changes to the plans, and he's going to bring you through those very briefly because it's Christmas time, and I don't think everybody wants to be here all night, so we'll put him right on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Just for the record, Joe Casali, Rhode Island, registered professional engineer, offices at 300 Post Road in Warwick. Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just quickly, so since we saw all of you last at the site walk on December the 9th, one of the things we noticed is that encroachment has been removed in that northernmost corner. So that was something that pleasantly surprised to see. We also looked at the remnants of the longhouse. You see where those blue lines are right there. That's where we were in terms of the field, those remnants. And we've done that site distance analysis, seeing that, you know, going westbound, you're upwards of 605 feet when you finally see the roof of the car coming over the crest. And then eastbound, you're upwards of 850 feet. So per code, the AASHTO stopping site distance for the posted speed is 250 feet. But even from observed speeds, you can see of 50 miles an hour, where we exceed it in both directions. And in terms of design changes, some modification, we were able to truncate that infiltration basin. So now it's much smaller, still doing the job of attenuating peak runoffs, but now we're not anywhere near those westernmost remnants. We've put some boulder walls in so we could reduce some of the filling and increase the basin capacity. We've also have some walkouts to minimize some of the, some of the disturbance, and trying to preserve as many of those large caliper trees as we can. So with that, members of the board, be happy to answer questions of you, or if there's anyone from the public here that would like to speak.
Let's open up for the public first. It's 6:10. If any member of the public would like to be heard on this matter, please come forward. With no one responding, we will close the public hearing at 6:10. Does the board have any questions? Beginning with Mr. Moon.
I think Mr. Leach was planning on being here.
He was present at the inspection.
Did he send any documentation in?
Not that I'm aware of. What we could do, of course, is to the extent he comes prior to voting on it, we can reopen the public hearing, but if he's not here, there's nothing.
I think you had asked for something from.
Yeah, I spoke with him at the site visit, and he said that he had received some communications from the State Historic Preservation Office, and that was forwarded in the correspondence from them was forwarded to the town planner, and that if we wanted to see copies, that the copies would be provided to the board. That's my recollection of the conversation I had with him out at the site.
Mr. Casali, have you heard from him other than at the site?
I think I saw him last at the site walk.
When we were all together?
Correct.
Any other questions over here, Mr. Casali? Charlie, you had some questions?
At the site, I noticed there's a storm out that comes from 44 onto that property. What is going to be done with that out?
Yeah, so that's going to be, take a look at,
It's right.
yeah, the screen, please. So in terms of drainage, and this isn't required at master plan, this is what, if we're approved, what we'll be filing with the town and with the DEM. So in terms of drainage, you're gonna take all of that stormwater into that basin right here. And then we're going to use that outlet control structure to take that water where it goes naturally, which is across 44 in a southerly direction, and then into some of those ponds that are further south. So that's the pretense, is to mimic existing conditions. That's what happens today. That big bowl that we saw in the field is going to be utilized as our primary detention basin.
So you're saying to me that that is going to be used to help with the drainage that you have from the road, from the road going into it?
Excuse me?
The road water, the drainage from the other side is going to be still connected into yours now? Is that what you're saying? Because that water comes from 44, the other side of the highway, under the road, and comes out into yours.
No, that goes opposite. That water
opposite?
flows southerly. We've cambered that line, and that line, I don't know that it's preserved going across the street. That water goes looking at the north arrow away from our site. The Route 44 water doesn't come into our site through that pipe.
It doesn't.
No, it goes the opposite
It's
way.
the opposite.
Correct.
So, but the basin that water is going to go into, you said you made it smaller, or did you make it bigger?
We were able to make it larger by putting the retaining walls there and doing the grading. We were able to make that basin larger because we had to make the other basin, the infiltration basin 3, smaller to preserve the historical remnants.
Right. And what Mr. Clear, because I noticed that the town engineer has the same problem with that. And he said it wasn't up to par about the size. And did you show him the new plan about making that one small and that big one? Has the town engineer himself seen this plan yet?
No, his review, his next review will be, if we garnish master plan approval, we'll file concurrent applications with the DOT, with the DEM, and with the town engineer's office. They're all going to get the same package in terms of drainage, and that's what we'll see, what you see today up on that screen. But no, he hasn't seen that now because you're at master plan.
Because I tried to get a hold of him, and I guess Mr. Phillips is sick, so I was trying to. And another question I have has to do with him too, is about, and I couldn't find it, the lighting plan.
Right, so in terms of lighting, there's only going to be wall pack lighting on all of the garages, on all of the fronts, similar to what you see on the rendering. You're not going to see extensive street lights within this development, but as we testified to back in November, will comport to the town standards in terms of 0.5 foot candles over the property line. Like, for instance, there's going to be no light pollution because of this property. You know, this is low intense in terms of its residential use. It's not like, you know, a commercial use or something that would require high lighting, like safety of a bank per se.
Well, I'm just going by, once again, what his, for me to look at, he asked me to look at. It said it was under chapter 156 that was supposed to be looked at.
I think he put it, it's a general statement. Do you want to read it for the record? I don't have those in front of me verbatim.
It says the project's subject to review.
That's right. And so it is for his review. We agree with that, and we will submit that for his review. It's at the next stage that he'll review. The town engineer is going to review this for lighting, for landscaping, and for drainage. He'll wear multiple hats. So yes, we agree that it is subject to that lighting review by the town.
Okay. And the same thing with the water, to make sure, he said that the new system, the water is going to all work correctly, the drainage.
That's right. If the town engineer doesn't approve the drainage, we're not going to be able to proceed forward at the preliminary plan stage.
That's it. Thank you, Joe.
Any other questions? The basins that you mentioned, the one closest to 44, obviously will be flowing as it is already designed into ponds on the other side. Are the other two basins going to be draining into that one closest to 44 as well? Or is it just going to be an evaporation in?
Same, and then, and I misspoke, the one, so the first basin one, yes, will drain into basin two, and then this will infiltrate into the ground. And this basin as well, is an infiltration basin. This too will be, majority will be infiltration, and any of the runoff will come off onto 44 as it does today. Some of this site discharges onto 44, and it will continue to do so.
Well, the one closest to 44, am I correct? There's a drain that goes under 44?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. We will not utilize that drain. That will infiltrate into the ground,
All three of the basins?
which it will ultimately all get to the ponds southerly, but it won't go to them overland flow. It'll go through the, the groundwater table and so forth, and then ultimately make its way to those ponds.
Any other further questions of Mr. Casale? I saw someone come in that has had an interest in this matter. I think it would be appropriate to have a motion to reopen the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Do we have a second, by the way?
Second.
Okay, the ayes have it. Public hearing is reopened at 6:19. Anyone who would like to speak on this matter, please come forward.
And I'll ask the solicitor, as Mr. Chairman, thank you for hearing me. If, as a commission, we're more into the staff comment rather than public comment. So if you want a formal, the solicitor can give a formal idea on where we would fit in. But it's just a point of order I made last time. Normally, we just tell you what we think and give you our advice, and then we move on to the next thing. I was going to say that we did get a response from the state of Rhode Island. I mentioned to board member Moen that we sent a letter, which I think you all got, from the Historic Preservation Commission to the state. And so you have that letter, but I did have, and I'll distribute these if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman. It's only 2 pages. And what this is, no.
I did. I saw a copy of it. I don't know if the other board.
I can distribute it to you via email for informational purposes. The answer to it on your behalf is what I'm going to distribute now.
Do you have the letter with you, the initial letter?
No, I sent that to Michael Phillips at Planning.
Or do we happen to have a copy of that with us?
We need to put one in the record.
Mr. Chairman, basically it was at the request of the board, at the recommendation of Mr. Moen, that we asked for guidance essentially. So we wrote that letter asking for guidance.
Yeah, well, I'm not being critical of that in any way. There appears that some member, the majority of the board, did not receive a copy of the original letter and were referring to a response. And there's also an indication that the original letter should be marked as an exhibit for the purposes of the hearing as well. So that's why I asked if anyone had a copy of the letter, perhaps that could have been read, and then the response could have been read. But
I almost have it memorized, but I understand your point is well taken.
if you could generally give us the gist of the letter.
Yes, it basically says, and I think Catherine, early on, I asked for your comment on what I would be saying, as she knows people at the state as well. It basically says, at the behest of the Planning Board of Review, we are seeking guidance on the site, 7119 Putnam Pike, as it has historical importance. So with that, we mentioned findings of fact that it is in the Blackstone River Valley National Corridor, that it has, as I said, significant historic significance, and that the commission would like guidance, including anything regarding, physical alteration permits or whatever. And that all would go through, as is being stated earlier, that would not be anything we would have anything to do. That would be the state with the builders and developers and your board. So we discussed some of those things, and then so the response is at your request kind of thing.
Do you have copies, did you say?
Yeah, so can I pass this up? Okay. I think I made a copy for everyone here.
We should, because it was, the original letter should be marked as an exhibit, and
Mr. Kane, I
the
may have
response
actually one
as well.
Mr. Chair, where did you put the letter? You said the letter was exhibit 1?
We didn't specifically mark it, but we can mark it as exhibit 1 and the response as exhibit 2.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a very short letter, so if you can indulge the board, I'll just read the 3 paragraphs.
Fine.
This is to Robert Leach, Chair of Smithfield Historic Preservation Commission, via email, and I'm to report to you. The Longhouse site, Putnam Pike at Mapleville Road, Smithfield, Rhode Island. Dear Mr. Leach, at your request, Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission has reviewed the plan development of the property that is on the site of the circa 1755 Longhouse. No archaeological survey has been conducted on this property, but depending on what ground disturbance has taken place in the past on the property, the Longhouse archaeological site may well be potentially eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. We recommend that development of property be designed so as to minimize disturbance in the vicinity of the Longhouse Foundation. These comments are provided in accordance with the State of Rhode Island Antiquities Act. If you have any questions, please contact Charlotte Taylor, Principal Archaeologist at this office. Signing for the Executive Director, Jeff Emdy, is Charlotte Taylor, the State Archaeologist. I'll just bring to your attention that it confirms our Commission's opinion that the site is valuable and historically should be preserved, where it says potentially eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places.
You happen to be present at the walkthrough.
Yes, sir.
Did you have any concerns after the walkthrough?
No, I thought the developers, owners, and the engineers were very cooperative in answering any questions without deliberating, just findings of fact. This is what we see. This is what's here. I will mention on the next page of this document, as just a reminder, we sent this to Michael Phillips in planning and said, these are our comments after requesting and receiving a final grading plan, which was forthcoming. We were kind of running out of time, so thank you to Casale Engineers for sending us right over. We made our comments just, within the last couple of days. It's pretty simple. We just kind of want to be able to report to you as the progress of the project goes forward. So number one would be survey locate historic features prior to modifying grades. If there was a stake in the ground that said limit of disturbance, we're good. That's all we need. Second thing is conversations were on site with the owners, identify and preserve large caliber trees where possible. They were nice enough to note many on the western boundary. We just want to go on record as saying that would be a good thing to do. without getting into which tree exactly is damaged, what would the arborist say, without getting beyond our purview. It's an ask, if you will, for the site that we want to preserve in some manner. And the main reason for that is we have a tree preservation ordinance, as everyone here very well knows. The violations that we see are not necessarily by the developer owner, they're by overzealous tree cutting companies that just go stone wall to stone wall. So I would refer the planning board and the owners and the engineers, so when they flag the site, to say this is the buffer, that is a physical boundary that the tree clearing companies won't violate. And I think this is one way to do it, is to just remind everybody of the tree preservation ordinance and not have some of the activities we've seen in the town.
I got a couple, I've never seen, this throws me a little curve here. I'd like to ask legal counsel. What are we looking at here? Responsibility. It may or may not be. Is it Christmas? Is it not Christmas? Should we stop? This is serious. This could open up a can of worms. If we say yes to letting them go, and it comes out that this is a historical thing, how are we gonna be responsible for it? Are we gonna be responsible for letting it go or not being responsible?
Board, I can state definitively, I am not aware right now of the compliance of the Rhode Island Antiquities Act. I can't give you the actual opinion on that issue. I can say by looking at it, it doesn't say much either way. It basically says, stop digging and let us know. And it sounds to me that if you stop digging and you see something, we have to come out and figure out another way to go around it. Stop digging, see something, we find out you didn't tell us, the developer's in trouble, because your condition as a board simply can be a comment that states as digging begins, with what, any yard or finding that you can. I think if we leave the board at that point, because it's really the developer that they're gonna look to, so long as the board conditions.
Well, that's my point about this whole thing. This is like, which is it? You know, it may be, so do we, if we allow them to go digging, who's gonna, observing, finding out if there's something there, not something there, who's gonna be responsible for that? Are they gonna send somebody out? We sending somebody out, or we're just gonna trust the contractor?
I can answer that question, Mr. Solicitor, if you'd like.
I wanted a legal question on it, is what I want a legal.
Well, that's practical. I don't know if the state, I don't know practically if the State Preservation Society sends people to these projects.
Can we find out if more, I would like to have the board, me personally, before we do anything any further, review this a little bit more carefully. This document seems Rhode Island, I mean, this looks like a pretty important document.
Address this on behalf of my client. This is still master plan. So you're approving a concept. We have to go engineer it, right? Drainage, all the things, satisfy Kevin clearing lighting. We can address this further. The way I read this says one thing, really. We recommend that development of the property be designed so as to minimize disturbance in the vicinity of the Wallen House Foundation. And that's what we're doing.
I agree, and I don't think the letter does much other than potentially cover the state without the state doing anything to determine what the conditions are. That's my reading of the letter.
A survey, they didn't say stop, they said to do exactly what we're doing.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, and Tim Kane hit the nail right on the head.
But
There's a condition right there that they spelled out, and as we move along further in design, we'll see evidence that the plan has been designed so as to minimize disturbance.
and the solicitor has a very good point that we can put a condition on that to the extent excavation reveals something of concern, then it's got to be evaluated.
Mr. Chairman, I would concur with Attorney Kane, because we asked specifically, as Mike was saying, basically straightforward questions. The answer is they don't have purview here. If this was an historic site that was already not just eligible, but given the moniker and accepted by the feds and the state that it is a National Register property, now you're in a different situation. They have no purview other than along the edge of the highway on State Highway for the physical alteration permit, anything that might be happening there. But on this site, they're telling you the importance of it. They're not saying, oh, by the way, you check with us every step of the way. They're assuming that our commission, and I'll read the comment again that I made, is that a survey would locate historic features prior to modifying the grades in that area. We would go and look at this and make sure that all these things are staked. And if there's anything as it's happening and you request the commission to be on site for a portion of that time, we could accommodate you as well. We are your a professional organization when it comes to historic features on the site and protecting them, hence our letters, communications, and directness and asking you to listen to our concerns and any direction that we might bring to you for you to implement. That's the way I would look at this.
Mr. Leach, was one of the main purposes of your initial letter to inquire whether they have taken a position previously on the property as opposed to have an opinion today?
Basically, it implied at any time. And at any time, they have not done that. I, in my capacity as an architect, have worked on many projects where there's federal and state oversight and archaeological work is done, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm familiar with this. As I mentioned, when this first came up, the state doesn't have purview directly. They're advising you here that it is important and you should proceed with caution, and that it would be eligible for listing if it were submitted for such. So I think some of this, to answer your question, is to have the commission involved in the process as we have been already. And I think from what our original site field and site survey has indicated is the rear portion is already altered. The front portion has not been physically altered with excavation the way that the rear half is. That would mean that if we're going to go forward and identify some of these more, we would get permission through this board of the owner to go out and look further and then ask for stakes to be put in the ground where we did find things. And if that was the case, then any alteration or design of this basin, Mr. Casale, we have the benefit of knowing what's there that we have identified with. So I don't see that there's a great harm that could be done as long as the confines, as we have seen on the site, are limited to what is now memorialized. I didn't have anything memorializing this drainage until I requested it. We do not normally send directives to the planning board. We send them to the planning department, and then they're forwarded from the planning department to you. So that's normally the path protocol that we use, so that if there's something that needs to be modified or if there's a comment or criticism, then we get it at the Department of Planning submission. So I wrote my letter on December 7th, so there's no reason I can see why you don't have it. But again, other than the chair who got it, probably shortly after that, if I'm not.
I was copied on the correspondence.
Yeah.
Any questions of the board based upon Mr. Leach's comments?
My question is to the legal department. You feel safe that this is, we're all set?
See, you want to spot that question again?
My question is to the for you, as I have no idea. What is being said is true. You have no problems with us going forward with this.
I think you can still move forward with the project, yes. I do think that certain you need some conditions added, perhaps the weeks can visit the site, stake it, as he said, and look at those items. But and move forward. This letter doesn't specifically provide a liability issue to the board by granting.
Yeah, but just the word minimize, what is that, it says minimize, what does that mean? Like really, like not bring an excavator in there?
That's, so.
Or you doing it by shovel? Are you doing it yeah, I'm not trying to be funny here, but it says minimize. What does minimize mean on that construction site? Heavy equipment, not a heavy equipment? Shovels looked at, dug with?
I think it has to do more with minimizing the area where that footprint is. It doesn't necessarily mean how you can excavate in that area. It simply means going as minimal as possible to disturb that area.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? Was there a question whether everybody could hear what's being said? No, they're on. Okay. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I hear.
So I think the minimize has to do with the engineers presenting to you for evidence for that area. How they go about minimizing it, the equipment they use, this letter will not apply.
You're happy, I'm happy.
Mr. Casale, we'll hold you off for a second. We're going to finish with Mr. Leach, close the public session, then we'll have you come back for comment, okay? I think there was another question for Mr. Leach.
More of a statement. There hasn't been any specificity concerning the historical significance of the property or the land, right?
Not if you look at my technical review, page and a half, I think that it has been very explicit about the importance of the site.
Right, but there hasn't been any violations. It really doesn't
That's
go
correct.
into detail concerning the historical significance of the property, right?
No, that's not correct.
No, and there aren't any violations, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so as with any other construction project, the foreman or the officer in charge or the superintendent in charge of the project has the responsibility to ensure that the law is followed and that it conforms to established plans that we've all agreed upon, right?
With the addition of the attachment that I put that
Right.
says we would like to see those features staked so that everyone knows it's over here, not over here. That's pretty simple, right?
Certainly. So the super in charge is going to ensure that that takes place. So any violations at this point are not articulated here.
There are no violations currently. You are correct in your
Right,
earlier
so-
statement.
So anything that we're talking about along those lines is really speculative, isn't it?
It's not speculative for me as long as it's defined. I mean, I don't see anything happening.
Let me clarify a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I am as historically and environmentally oriented as anyone in this room.
Mm-hmm.
But there either is a really articulable concern or there isn't. So what I would suggest is that we bring closure to this and vote on it.
Well, let's make sure Mr. Leach is complete. We'll close the public hearing to the extent we have no one else that would like to be heard on the public hearing. I think Mr. Casale would like to make some comments in response to hearing the interplay between the board and Mr. Leach, and then we can.
I would recommend keeping it open during Mr. Casale's comments.
Keeping what
All right.
open? The public
Fair
hearing?
enough.
Okay.
I
Well,
think,
with that said,
yeah.
Mr. Leach, we're going to hear from Mr. Casale on some of the issues raised.
yeah, do you want me the only comment I would have, if I may, is that the second attachment, be part of the caveat for our statement. Otherwise, I agree with everything you said. We're not trying to hold this project up. In
Thanks,
good
Mr.
faith, we think it's a good project, and we don't have any grave concerns. Thank you very much for your time and involvement and listening to the commission.
Thank you. Mr. Casali?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to revisit that slide that's behind you, which was presented at master plan. That is the approximate footprint of the longhouse as we deem that, based on the historic knowledge we have. I mean, a portion of it is in the state right-of-way. So while I have the utmost respect for the Preservation and Heritage Commission, they should have been involved with this or were involved with this when the DOT redid Route 44 and in the state right-of-way. Obviously, those grades were changed. The state is solely responsible for work within that right-of-way. While it may be listed on the National Historic Register, you may have violations from the state there if it was. So respectfully, take this letter. There's not much substance to this letter.
Mr. Casali, you heard some of the comments by Mr. Leach regarding some of the concerns going forward with the project. Do you have any major issues with any of them in terms of proposed conditions?
Yeah, I think we've done what they've asked us to do in terms of minimizing this. We've pulled that pond as far east as we could to stay away from those remnants. We've made that building 3 a walkout to minimize the grading. We've had to put a wall along that entrance so that detention basin 2 could be large enough now to capture that water. These are all things that we've acquiesced to, including the name change. We've offered placards. We've done everything Mr. Leach and company has asked, but it has to end at some point. I understand historical significance, but I think it's a stretch to say that this could ever be named to the National Historic Register when the DOT just ripped through the area to redo 44. It's just a pragmatic, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but it's just a pragmatic, common sense approach. I think we've done everything asked of us. I don't know that there's much more that we can do, but we certainly don't need inspectors any more than we already have on the site while we're excavating.
I have a question. Joe, can you this is the final plan with the retention pond?
Yeah.
The outlay. Can you overlay the longhouse on top of that?
Yes, let me see if the only place I have the longhouse on, let me see, I have it here. We may have it on the plans, I don't know that I have it. So you can see where the building is, where the pond is.
Yeah, but I want to see where the building is in relation to that pond.
Let me see if we can, we'll deploy the tactical team to see if they can quickly come up with something. Couple layers, couple clicks.
Yeah.
Nice job.
So that pond is going to be in a big portion of the longhouse.
And now remnants we saw, though, were here, which were far off of the longhouse, which leads me to believe, are those really remnants? Because something isn't fitting. We only have pictures. And so when you look at the remnants and you look at the site survey, it's not jiving. If we only saw, those were the ones we saw in the field with the mortar, and those were the ones that we saw upwards up at the hill.
Can that pond be moved up farther?
We can certainly try to the maximum extent practicable, but we're running out of real estate.
Yeah, more north.
I would just like to say a couple of things. Scott Adler, Adler Brothers. When this whole thing came about, I met with Mr. Leach on site. We agreed in the field where we would protect and where we would be able to allow the basin to be constructed. That's how that basin got reshaped to those limits that we agreed to. That we did not see any remnants of the longhouse, and the limit is specific to a test pipe that was in the ground that was done quite a while ago, and we took a tape measure and we measured 20 feet from that test pipe. And Mr. Leach said that he would feel comfortable if we started our pond somewhere in that area and went up the hill. Right. So that could explain why the longhouse supposedly overlays.
And the way you normally do your work, you plan on being there throughout the course of the construction, right?
Correct.
Thanks, Scott.
Mr. Casali, how accurate is the overlay that we just saw? Is that to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, or is it?
No, there is no engineering degree of certainty. You would call that maybe a class 4 survey because it's just plotted from record information. The landscape has changed too much from the points of reference on the original longhouse. They're no longer there. With 44 being pushed over, with the village at Waterman Lake coming in, all that area has been, a lot of that area has been changed. So are we within 3, 4, 5 feet? Yeah, but that's not survey rotated to a 100th of an inch.
Because as I understand some of the interplay from the board, there was perhaps some concern to the extent it overlays into where the basin is now. That's why I asked that question, is how accurate is the overlay in relation to where the basin is from what we saw today?
And like Scott said, when the two gentlemen met in the field, they had an agreement. We designed according to that agreement. Here we are.
Can you bring up the one with the basin again one more time? Okay. Any other questions of the board members?
Mr. Chairman, yes, as far as the letter goes, we'll, I think, would agree that there is some vagueness here. One thing is clear, though, is that the recommendation is to develop the property, be designed so as to minimize the disturbance in the vicinity of the longhouse foundation. So the question came up, who's going to determine what minimize does? And I think Mr. Leach has agreed to basically help out to determine what minimize means, and to go out there, stake out with a contractor or with whomever to, in his opinion, as the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission, determine what minimize would be in benefit of this town. So with that, I feel comfortable moving forward between this letter and Mr. Leach's testimony.
Mr. Leach, you'd like to be heard again?
Yeah, in fairness to the owner developers and the engineers, when I looked at the building and scaled how large the footprint would be, I sent an attachment, which everyone here got, similar to this with a dotted line that identified where it is It's called Aerial 2008. And when you have that, mine was based on a scale drawing that I used, and I scaled the size of the building. In fairness to them, that's actually too large. It's a smaller area than that. So, and everything that Mr. Adler said is absolutely correct. We went in the field and said, there should be, there are features there. We want the limit of disturbance to be no greater than there. Limit of disturbance means you can't drive a bulldozer through and around it to get to that spot. You have to protect the spot, and you can work within inside that limit of disturbance. So that's why my comment was, if we have an agreed upon stake in the ground, which I think we have conceptually, that I, in the last meeting, said I'm more than happy to work in good faith with the Adlers, because I think the compromise is actually effective. Ms. Lynn's comment is well taken. If you identify it exactly, then everybody's protected. But we did say that, which is germane, the area where the foundation is or was is a depression. On that end, we're going to increase that depression in the drawing that you have, which is more definitive. The grading plan that you have on that second page, that the Casale engineer was willing to issue a pretty quick turnaround. This is more of a definition of it. So I would say that this might mislead you a little bit to think that there's more encroachment into that than there really is. So I think my drawing's more accurate and shows less disturbance conceptually than that does. And it's all the depression, remember. So by the time you clean this other area up, you may be reducing that a couple feet or more as well. So not to get into the weeds literally too much, but I'm fairly confident that working with the Adlers, a version of this would be accommodated, and Member Lynn's comments, while appropriate, you would know what's going on. If there was any issue, you would know about it through the planning department. That's my conduit normally.
And do I understand your testimony then, based upon your review, your understanding of where the as-built for that particular basin is going to be located, you don't have any problems with it being in conflict with minimizing disturbance as referenced by the State Historic Preservation Society? You're comfortable?
No, I think it not to go beyond my purview, but my testimony would be that I don't take exception to what is laid out in this document. That's just an illustration. We as architects and engineers put that forward as a concept, but this is more defined. And I think this is a bigger effort. And I think with this, even though it's a compromise on our part, we think that this is a way to show good faith on our part, but still protect the heritage of this area of the Blackstone River National Corridor. So we think this is a fair compromise, as long as you do what we say in the second page, which is stake it. So everybody that comes in, tree clearing, bobcat, excavator, they know where they can go and where they can't go. And then I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't see why we should hold the project up unless you have concerns, and I'd be more than happy to answer those with evidence or in the professional experience I have in doing this. Thank you.
Any further member of the public that would like to be heard? That being said, we'll close the second session of the public session at 6:56. Discussion between the board? Any discussion?
I would just say I'm comfortable with the existing conditions for the master plan approval. And then we can recommend the condition of Historic Preservation Society making some marks.
Yeah, as I understand it, the State Preservation Society, the letter's really there to say, hey, if there's something, you got to put us on notice of.
Yeah.
It's really to protect them. They're not necessarily noting a problem. Catherine had a good point with the overlay, but I think that that basin can be still constructed minimizing disturbance, and that to the extent there is something that's uncovered, I think that that could be a condition, as we talked, to approval. So that's my comment about what we heard.
To be as sensitive toward the historical aspect and environmental aspect of this as possible, agreed. But you could say that about any project. If you find anything that's a showstopper, stop and we'll look into it, right? So thus far, there's no problem with this plan that I can see.
We have a motion.
Yes. Oh, you want me? Oh. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the master plan for the residents at Longhouse, 719 Putnam Pike, with the condition that there's Historic Preservation Society and with the owners and the applicant for staking the area to minimize disturbance.
Second.
I'd like to add something to it. The town engineer, I want to make sure his approval on the basic changes.
Well, that's going to be part of the process of
Is that
this
a
conceptual.
is that a requirement right now for the master plan?
Well, the engineer is gonna look at this for preliminary purposes. So anything that needs to be addressed has to be taken care of when they come before you at the preliminary stage.
I mean, you can still make a statement to that effect, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Indicating the importance that's like, we would like to have
yeah,
it.
so
Concern, member board will still be addressed. They come before you at the preliminary stage. And if they come before you and they don't get any information from the engineer, which was back and require that information. Most likely, they're gonna go to RIEM and to the town engineer before they come back and see you. You'll have more definitive information on the rest of it.
yeah, and they have to anyway, because they made a change. So,
Yes.
so,
Well, there should be
yeah, yep. Right, which has to be approved after this point anyway. No, I think,
So what's the motion again?
You want to give them?
The master plan with the conditions that the historic commission and the owner and developer work in conjunction to state the area to minimize disturbance. And Member Boyd mentioned also town engineers involved in reviewing the basic changes.
Anything else?
that works.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Mike.
I can bring it up at discussion of the motion.
Okay, let's hold it.
We'll discuss it now.
All right. I'd just like to, if it's acceptable, to make an amendment to the motion that the motion reference the memorandum from the town planner dated November 8th to this board, in that it recommends that the variances are requested for the project be okayed. Also that the zoning relief and waivers with the following conditions: the applicant provide Historic Preservation Commission access to the site, provide a traffic letter indicating the adequacy of the site distance, extend sidewalk along Route 44, consider reducing driveway width and move units closer to the center, increase yard space, and that the motion include exhibits 1 and 2, the letter to HPC and the response from HPC. And also that the motion include the findings of fact as written on exhibit B1.
And should we mark the town planner's memorandum as an exhibit as well?
Agreed.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? The ayes have it. Now, okay, the next matter is 250 George Washington Highway, ID 2304, informational meeting, major land development, master plan review. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the Smithfield Planning Board. For the record, Attorney K. Joseph Shikachi, representing the applicant. With me tonight is Gary Boletto, the principal of Boletto Realty, and Brian Tholman from Dupree Engineer. He's the project engineer on the project. Tonight, Mr. Chairman, honorable members, we are requesting a amended master plan approval. This project came before this honorable board in June of this year and received master plan approval that included a restaurant. Unfortunately, after 6 months of marketing, intensive marketing, realtors, brokers, the economics did not support a restaurant on this site. So before we continue down that path, we thought it best to amend the plan that you had approved. That plan included a waiver for a traffic study. This board approved it, and we're asking for that waiver to be renewed or reissued. And what we're doing, so you get an idea to this plan that was approved, I believe unanimously without opposition in June, is to take the land or the area that was going to be used for the restaurant and redistribute it so it's slightly more office retail space and more residential space. Again, as we all know, master plan is the beginning of the first approval, so we're starting back from square one. We'd still have to do substantial engineering, testing, come back before this board for preliminary state approvals, et cetera. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Tholman's here and some of the technical aspects, but it's in essence the same plan that you approved minus the restaurant, and that restaurant land area gets redistributed for more residential. There's just a stronger residential market than there is for another restaurant.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend before you hear any testimony, you address the waiver request for the traffic study.
Okay.
I believe this board granted that waiver the first time in June. However, you have to make sure, because if you don't grant the waiver, it's not a certified complete project, which would be encouraged in terms of the whole amended project. So you should definitely confirm you are comfortable with your motion to waive that traffic study.
And your solicitor is 100% correct, because if that doesn't pass, then we would have to come back and redo it. He's 100% correct.
Okay. Any questions of the board members on the waiver request?
I understand if we don't do that, then the application's not complete, and
That's correct, sir.
And last time we waived it.
Can you explain the difference? This appears to be substantially different. I mean, a lot more residential units than previously proposed.
So I can call Mr. Tholman up, and he can go into the square footage a little bit more detailed. He's the engineer.
It just seems that it would appear that there's going to be a lot more traffic here.
There would be more residential traffic, but there'll be no business operation and no restaurant. So depending on the type of restaurant, those traffic offset. We will, at the next, assuming we get the waiver and we go forward tonight, at the next stage, which is the preliminary, we will have a traffic study, and we'll be happy to answer those questions in great detail. But I can give you the difference of what the original plan was and what we're asking for tonight. I can have Mr. Tholman explain it to you.
That would be great.
Sure. I'd ask to be sworn in as a engineer, right?
Do you do a formal swear?
We have it in the past.
And again, I'm sorry, so, and this is purely to understand the difference in magnitude. So you don't have to go into your whole I would rather not hear your whole presentation.
No.
I just want to hear what the differences is between previous proposal and this
So,
proposal.
so the only real difference is there would be more trip generation of about, in a multifamily, it's about between 0.6 and 0.75 trips per unit. So the afternoon peak would not be any different. Actually, the restaurant probably generates more because that is when that would be at their peak hour. But the residential really would be more on the AM peak. What we're doing to mitigate that is the 3 ingress and egress points, the 2 along George Washington Highway and then the 1 right in, right out along Douglas Pike.
But what is the quantity difference between the residential units?
It's probably, there were 21 units maximum in the first go around. So at, let's say 3/4, that's probably 17, and 63, 3/4 is probably 40.
Say that one more time. Say that, can you repeat that?
It's probably a 30 trip increase in the AM peak.
But what's the number of units
It
compared
was
to?
21 under the original proposal,
And what's this one here?
63.
So we're tripling the number of units.
Approximately.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have parking spaces for all these units?
Yes,
And we have a place where we're going to put the snow?
yes.
Okay. In the plan, it looks really tight where the fire is going to turn around, fire trucks. I'm just
I think you have
wondering-
I think you have to go through the waiver request first
All right.
before we get
Yeah,
into.
well,
Yeah.
why don't we focus right now, and some of the questions may,
Yeah.
like the question that was just asked a minute ago, it has some overlap with the waiver. Let's try to focus on the waiver. Any further questions on the waiver?
Yeah, I think it's worth the conversation, and we are going from 21 to 60. So at least with the conversation, do we think traffic study is necessary? No.
My question is, once the waivers are given, the master plan clock starts tonight because it's not a complete application until we grant these waivers. So the clock for this submission would start this evening, if I'm correct.
After not necessarily the waiver, and then the vote to approve the master plan. You are correct. It has to be 2 votes to start the clock.
Okay.
I think the other thing that's important, we're not waiving in totality doing the traffic study. We're just deferring it to the preliminary stage.
And at that stage, you'll have a chance to review. And these, at this level of master plan, this is a conception. That number may go down. Will certainly not go up, but it would could possibly go down depending on more detailed engineering. Not a lot, but it could go down 5 or 10 units. It's conceivable. But we would come back here, you'd get another bite of the apple, and at that time, the burden would be on us to prove to you that we have, as the young lady answered, adequate parking, adequate egress, adequate place to put the snow, et cetera.
I think if the waiver is strictly for the submission, and you have the possibility of get a study further down the line, I think that's.
I think you mentioned there will be am I correct? That
Yeah,
there will be a study?
absolutely, 100%, yes.
He said that.
Okay.
This project will require traffic.
Okay.
It's in your Ego district, which is the requirement. The difference is the Ego overlay in your zoning ordinance requires traffic studies at the first stage.
And I think the reason why that happened is because the EGO was supposed to be an expedited review process. So that we were requiring it at stage 1, at the master plan approval.
Back when you.
When we approved it, it was an expedited condition or situation.
Correct. And there was also the contemplation, some of these projects are gonna have interior roads to
Correct.
connect other properties, so the traffic studies will hopefully join under that sites of properties connecting into interior roadways.
Yeah. Any discussion between the board?
Just have one more question. I apologize. Did I read somewhere that they're also requesting a exception in the EGO regulations in regards to parking, a 75% reduction on non-competing okay. So that's something that we would deal with later.
Later.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Discussion. I think the fact that they're going to have a study at the next stage is good, and it alleviates any concerns that we have generally in terms of whether or not a traffic study is going to be done. This just allows them to go through this stage without it, knowing that the next stage there will be. So I think, at least from my point of view, I have no problem with that.
I agree.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move to grant the waiver for traffic study to be completed at the preliminary submission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? The ayes have it.
Thank you. We appreciate it, and we look forward to coming back in greater detail. Thank you. I know, but I'm just saying, I want to put that on the record, that we are going to do it, we're going to come back. So at this point, we'd ask for the revisions to the master plan, and if that's acceptable, then as Mr. Moen said, the clock would start, and would clock stop for us too, to provide that information to the town in a timely fashion.
I think Mr. Moen had a question with respect to the revisions.
Good presentation, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So as Attorney Shikarchi indicated, the restaurant component, for a variety of reasons, just didn't make a lot of sense here. So we had a couple of pre-applications with the planning staff, and it morphed into what is presented before you tonight, which is a combination of residential, retail, and office uses. Mr. Phillips has indicated, notwithstanding one of the comments related to building number 3, that he very much likes this redo. As part of the residential component, there will be a 25% affordability component into the project, which is part of your economic growth overlay district requirements. The residential units will be apartments initially, but they are going to be constructed in a manner that would allow them to be condominiumized if the market so dictates. There are, in your package, towards the end of the plan set, there is a typical floor layout of how the units will. The ground floor would be a combination of office and retail, and then floors 2, 3, and 4 would be combinations of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. Really, 1 3-bedroom unit on the floor. 4 of the units would be 2-bedroom, and then 2 1-bedroom units. Ms. Lynn had made a comment in the preface remarks related to truck turns and fire apparatus. So we've included a truck turning and fire apparatus plan, and in each case, we've shown that fire apparatus has 360-degree access around all 3 of the buildings. The fire department indicated no issue at the TRC meeting. And we are confident that there is no reason that any movements are precluded. The project will be serviced by municipal water and sewer. We've been informed by both the engineering department and the superintendent of the Smithfield Water District that there would be no issue in either way. And in either case, right now the water terminates on the northerly side of 116, approximately here. This is an existing hydrant. We would extend it down to the south at another hydrant where the property terminates here. There'll be a midpoint hydrant roughly here, and then we will loop back through to here so that it's a loop system. There'll be one, possibly two hydrants internally to meet the no more than 500-foot separation from a hydrant to a building. In all likelihood, the sewer system would be a grinder pump that pumps up the hill to a manhole, and then the town engineer has indicated that there is a gravity trunk line on the southerly side of Douglas Pike that has sufficient capacity to accommodate the flows associated with this. So there'll be no need to cross over Route 7 as far as any of the utility connections, which is one of the things that the town engineer wanted to avoid. Given the kind of rocky nature of the site, we're envisioning all of the drainage will be subterraneous, store and meter it out in patterns that generally, right now, it goes to the northeast and the southeast. There are wetland complexes to the north, and then an isolated wetland complex roughly in the midpoint of the property. Mr. Phillips has asked, in an effort to improve intermodal transportation or multimodal transportation, that sidewalks be constructed along the northerly side of George Washington Highway and then southerly side of Douglas Pike to where the egress point is for the right in and right out. As far as the parking, we are asking, as the regulations provide for a reduction in shared uses to take the full advantage of the 75% reduction that's allowed. They are non-competing uses. The office and the retail would not compete with the residential uses. Parking studies that we've done on other projects support this type of reduction. If you, as part of the traffic study at the preliminary plan, we have no reservation about providing the parking impact analysis. I guess at that point I can defer to questions that members of the board may have.
Any questions for the board members?
Yes, since you're looking for the reduction in the parking, is there going to be an area that's specific to visitors? There's going to be strictly those that,
I think the site logistics are going to dictate that, for this building here, that the visitors probably congregate here. We are going to work with the architect based on the recommendation that was in the planning memo dated December 12th, of possibly reconfiguring this and incorporating components of this back into this building, which would then open up this area for parking.
it just seems with the commercial space, of course, it depends on the business too, but you could be filled up pretty quick, or a lot of, it's pretty tight on the parking. But you're going to do analysis of that anyway, right?
Yeah.
This particular building here, the planning department has recommended a possible reconfiguration. So that's in between the master plan and preliminary. We're going to do a deep dive and study this. This may be incorporated into this building, maybe reduced, maybe this, but one of the concerns that you raised is correct. Where's the shared parking going to go? We're going to have adequate parking so that the residents and the business users and the visitors have that. And we have to, because if we don't, the project fails, it doesn't work, they won't sell, the businesses won't rent. So it's a vital, it's a good question, it's a vital answer, but we won't give you that answer until we do a complete study, and we'll present that to you for your consideration to vote yes or no on the next step. But we're aware of the parking and this building may change. That's at the recommendation of the manager.
Thank you.
John?
The retail sales space that you're gonna do, where's like the largest one gonna be, like, you know, 3 square feet versus a.
So right now, we're showing a breakdown between the three buildings of roughly 21,000 square feet of retail space and 6,000 square feet of office space. That ratio could sway one way or the other, depending on the economics of the market conditions. In either case, they generate, the requirement is about 4 spaces per 1,000. Professionally, I think that's a little bit overstated. I think we've seen since the pandemic in 2020 that hybrid types of office uses are far more common these days, so they don't tend to generate the 4 spaces per 1,000. I can tell you definitively that I work in an office with 83 people, and it's not uncommon to see no more than 10 to 15 on any day that the office is used. There has been some interest in the property. I won't get into specifics because the discussions are highly confidential nature right now. But I think it would be a home run for the town. And it may be that they are completely complementary, that residents and the use are synonymous. But it's still very preliminary discussions at this point.
Is there a concept of what kind of retail you want to have, like hair clothes, you know, shopping?
I think Gary's intention is anything that is permitted by right within the economic growth overlay district requirements, to avoid the need to add another step in the permitting process. But I don't see it being anything that is a high traffic generator.
Like a nightclub or a bar or something?
It gets us into a whole different.
It doesn't work for the residents.
No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so, but just.
They become inconsistent uses, they're late night, they're loud, they draw younger, more socially party oriented.
Right.
It doesn't work with residential, doesn't work with the affordable component, folks here. So, yeah, and it's not permitted at all, it's good for that thing.
That's not permitted at all.
That wouldn't happen.
I think when the town developed the economic growth overlay district, it was to find retail uses that would complement the residential.
Yeah, more like hair salons.
Coffee shop, breakfast place, something like that.
It would be like, because even with a restaurant being there with outdoor seating here, it would be a problem. But you don't say you can't have that anyway. All right, thank you.
Any further questions?
Do you have a landscape plan?
There was one that was incorporated into it.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's in your packet. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion?
Can I continue?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Another question.
No. So, given all the, I meant to put it up there for a reason. Given that there's a substantial amount of residents in this building, right, 63, whatever you said, 60-something, these buildings seem to be surrounded by asphalt. You know, where are the kids going to play? I mean, how are you going to make it marketable to if it was going to be either apartments or condos that you've got basically surrounded by asphalt?
So one of the requirements of this submission was the project narrative. And as part of that project narrative on page 8 and 9, there's a population analysis. And we've looked at many different multifamily mixed-use uses in and around Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And ultimately, these types of developments do not foster themselves to school-age children.
It's very few, if any. These types of development, mixed use, and in streets that are as busy as they typically do not draw a lot of children. Now, that's not to say that we're gonna bar children, because that would be discriminatory, and that's not the case. So, but typically, just for the point you said, people with younger children don't want to be on a busy road. They want to be close to a school. They want to be close to a park. They want to be there. In these types of development, like Dowling Village, for example, they don't really have a lot of outdoor recreation activity for children because there's just not a need for it. So we're cognizant of the parking. We're going to look at pervious parking. There's a lot of things we can do that wouldn't be just typical asphalt, but we have your code requires a certain amount of parking. So we're going to balance that at the next level. And I will tell you, we would much prefer to put more green and less asphalt than anyone else. But we have to balance that with the requirements of your ordinance. So it's a challenge and it's a balancing act, but we're willing to undertake that and present a more detailed plan with you at the next level. But we're cognizant of that. You probably won't see a playground or a swing set because, as I said earlier, these projects historically do not draw children.
And I guess to that, it just appears that it's the capacity of this project. You're showing the capacity of the project. You're showing how big in 4 stories this project is by just showing the amount of parking you got. So are you really overbuilding the property based on what you're trying to do?
No. No.
Can you comment further?
Ultimately, we have to be able to support with parking, infrastructure, and landscaping what the project can support. And we did not take advantage of any of the density bonuses that are provided for in the Economic Growth Overlay District because this is what it can support. It can't support any more than this.
We're at maximum yield. This is what this geographical area, the setbacks, the wetlands, this is what it can support. As Brian said, under your code, there are density bonuses for more, but this land cannot support any more. So we're at full capacity. We start big and we kind of work down, but this is what the most that this property can yield in terms of residential.
Don't we have height restrictions in the EDF?
It's 50 feet.
It's 50 feet, and this is going to be under 50 feet.
Under 50 feet.
4 stories, 50, less than 50 feet.
Yep.
Looking at the elevations, has your architect look at the requirements for the EDO and the materials and the design that is intended from the EDO?
Yes.
We're not asking for any waivers from those.
The elevations that I see just doesn't represent the intent of what the EDO was standing for, which was things more in tune as the materials of Navigant and things like that. These look like very, I don't want to say what they look like, but it just doesn't have this, I think, I would ask your architect to go back and look at the EDO and the requirements that the EDO has for the materials that need to be used or should be used, because I don't think these elevations represent that.
Okay.
Fair enough. Good question. Good point.
And I guess my last point would be, and I'm sorry, I'm an architect. I come at this as an architect, okay? So.
It's good that you have an architect on the board.
So the way, unless you're, in a city, some of these most successful projects minimize the interaction between a retail person and a residence. So a lot of times they're basically on separate sides. So you're basically having the resident population coming in from one side of the building and allowing not crossing with the retail. This isn't gathering that. So again, ask your architect to kind of take a look at some of these things to make this a successful project. Because right now, I have concerns between just the size of the building, the aesthetics of the building, and just how the buildings are laid out. And I was on part of the EDO group that basically put that together, and this isn't matching what that was supposed to be. Again, the EDO, as far as the mixed use, was more of a village concept. It had a lot of different things going on at the time. But those are the materials that's in the ordinance. So
I will make sure that we remind him of
great, thank you.
the requirement.
I have a question. A question. The 60 units, what's the breakdown between 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom with each?
So each floor had 4 2s, 1 3, and 2 1s. So multiply that by 6.
So what's the math? What does it come out to?
I would say it's probably 50%, and I'm just giving general.
There's 9 3-bedrooms, there's 18 2-bedrooms. Oh, I'm sorry, 36 2-bedrooms and 18 1-bedrooms.
For the record, that was Mr. Boletto.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, question. The landscaping to the north you have there, that the land just beyond that point, is that usable land? I mean, could that be a green space? Is that?
It is in DEM's buffers. I think that my experience tells me that DEM is going to want that to remain natural.
Untouched, okay.
No, it doesn't mean that, passive recreation.
Right, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Place people can walk and just, you know.
Gazebo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions of the board members? Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Do we have a motion? There was an indicated public hearing on the,
Yeah, number C. Board will conduct a public hearing.
well,
C, part C.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, yeah, it's usually in a different place as well. But there's no harm in opening up to public hearing at 7:35. Any members of the public, feel free to come forward to comment. With no one coming forward, public hearing is closed at 7:35. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the application for 230 to 250 George Washington Highway, master plan review. And the board accept the memo from the town planner dated December 12th. We are granting approval of the land development project. The record supports evidence that the conclusion the applicant has provided the board with sufficient evidence that the master plan submission can adequately mitigate impacts and that this approval is based on the finding of facts prepared for this board by the town planner and marked Exhibit B with the following conditions: that the applicant provide a traffic study and mitigation plan at the preliminary stage, that the applicant consider alternatives to scaling back or reconfiguring building number 3 so that it fits better into the site. 3, that the applicant's architect revisit architectural standards of the Ego District, and that the layout of entrances to the residential units be reconfigured or studied vis-a-vis the entrance and exits to commercial spaces. Now, did I get that right, Richard? That you were looking at, asking them to revisit the layout of the entrances? Okay, all right, thank you. That's, I believe, it, Mr. Chairman.
And should we amend to add the town planner's memo as an exhibit as well?
So moved. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Right, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays to you all.
Merry Christmas
Thank you.
to both of you. Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to take a 2 to 5 minute break before we take up the next 2 matters.
No, that's all right. Go first. All right.
I can use that stair.
That was my guess.
Oh, for God's sake, we're all here. And the last thing, like, 19 hours a day is basically.
Trust me, I'm very like.
I've never done it.
Well, no, very sharp, very
Thank you, that's always good.
Of course.
I've already talked about. That's why it's not hard to say that he's a hands-on guy, and he's there. Gee whiz. His mother just passed this year. It was like a second mother to me. Really was.
That was definitely a simple design. And just like big flat colors. They invited by junior high school.
No. Timmy was a good kid. Got out of high school, went to college, went to law school. I mean, you know, he wasn't in trouble or anything like that. I used to run around with his oldest brother. How many times we almost got killed or arrested?
The whole something.
You know, I could exculpate myself very easily right now.
Yeah, that's not impressive. Yeah, but there's so many restaurants just right there. Yeah. Yeah, Blackstone and all the other ones. That's a tough competition.
His mother called my mother's wedding dress. Back in those days, they did that kind of stuff. Now everybody's going to be the.
Oh, yeah. I went there.
Never wanted it. That's when I know where the Chase Bank is. There used to be a restaurant called Rocco's Tavern in Rapid Valley Road.
I know, my wife went there once about 6 months ago. It is
The Audubon area was extended across the street from a farm.
just even from seeing other people come in, other people's food to the table, like, there's not small portions either. I mean,
It pains me when I drive through the center of town.
it is really good.
You know,
It's supposed to be, I like a husband and wife, but two people that are executive chefs in another restaurant.
my fiance lives
They do that there. Just you see from the outside, it doesn't, look like kind of place, but they're open limited hours because they're working on one type. A lot of times when they open up, it's like 1 month or something.
different type of.
Yep. Get the show on the road.
Next matter we have is Bryant University, campus-wide field house, ID number 2209, public hearing, major land development, preliminary plan review.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to get somebody to open the door so that Gary can get out the ADA? The door's locked at the.
It should be unlocked.
It's locked.
Okay, you got it?
Do we need to hold for a moment, or? Okay. Good evening, Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Chris O'Connor. I'm an attorney at Blish and Kavanaugh, located in Providence. We're here tonight on Bryant University preliminary plan. We were, just as a refresher, we were last year in August 31st, on a revised master plan, which was approved by the board, along with a recommendation to the zoning board. We went to the zoning board on September 6th, received zoning approval from the board. We're here more or less on a discrete part of the proposal, which is just the field house. And I have Mr. Casale here this evening again. He's prepared a PowerPoint, and we're prepared to show you the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Chairman, members of the board, just for the record, my name is Joe Casale. I'm a registered professional engineer. Office is at 300 Post Road in Warwick. If I may, show you the PowerPoint for this beautiful field house. So here we are at the university, and again, as Attorney O'Connor said, campus-wide master plan approval in August, ZDR special use permit back in September, and that's the location of the proposed field house. It's going to service both the competition field and along with the existing field house and bleachers, Bulldog Stadium. That's the strength and conditioning center, cognizant of the 100-foot setback to a residential district and also some freshwater wetlands that are on abutting lots. That is the proposed field house. And you can see the renderings. This would be if you're in the end zone of the strength and conditioning facility. That's what it would look like if you were sitting in the existing bleachers. And that's just a side view. In another rendering, you can see soccer field and football stadium. So quickly, programmatically, lobby, different locker rooms, the physical therapy, of course, the bathrooms and the restrooms. The club level, we have a green roof, some bleachers, a black and gold club, different concessions, catering, so forth and so on, film rooms, press rooms. And then the upper level is the press box, our coaches box, and radio boxes, TV, PA, officials, and again, some restrooms up top. And so that would be the competition field will stay grass. It'll be restriped so that it'll be in the center where we need it to be. We'll be putting in some grandstand bleachers. We've done this in the master plan. We formalized that access easement, that 22-foot wide. We've modified the parking so we can have some ADA spaces close to this building. In terms of site lighting, again, all dark sky compliant LED lights. These are some of the larger ones, and that's a cut of that light stand, and then some peripheral ones, 12-foot light post, again, dark sky compliant. That is a great shot. That's John Maury Road at Bryant University when we implemented those dark sky LED lighting. Again, I know I say this every meeting, but the technology has just changed so much. Water, while we have an existing main, 6-inch main, we actually have to bring a 10-inch up for this facility, which we'll be doing through Jacobs Drive. We'll have domestic fire protection and even an FDC connection, and as well as a hydrant. In terms of the existing utility corridor, we'll take advantage of that with our sewer force main. And then in terms of drainage, again, mimicking existing conditions, different drainage appurtenances at the respective low points, mitigating all the peaks, reducing all the volumes. Again, master plan back in August, special use September. We received a height variance, roadway variance, and tonight, Mr. Chairman, we're here before you for preliminary. Again, I know that was quick. I just don't see many people in the audience tonight. And we do have a couple of contingencies. We have filed a DEM application for stormwater permit, as well as drainage with the town engineer. water supply and fire and sewer. I know it's been crazy around here for the town engineer with all of the weather events. Be happy to answer questions of you or members of the board.
Any questions, Sean?
Actually, is Mr. Gannon, Stephen Harrisville?
Mr. Bannon, you mean Chief Bannon, the, no, he's not. Thomas Mann is with me, possibly answer questions, but go ahead.
Microphone.
My questions are on the parking.
Yeah,
And I see that you got the variances for 924 cars.
that's right.
So, but that is still a concern of mine. But it shows here, that Mr. Bannon was saying, that he has a plan for, in case there's a problem and, that kind of, what is the plan? They keep saying that, and then Mr. Mann says also there's a plan to incorporate if there's a problem. But I haven't seen any plan. What is the plan going to be?
I believe he testified that evening of a systematic approach that they have in terms of if there's any parking problems on the campus. They park in certain areas that aren't pavement. They have agreements with Fidelity across the street. They shuttle people in. His men and women are on site, parking, directing traffic and so forth. And we've never had, and we're proud of this, we've never had any enforcement issues with the police department saying that there's parking on 7, nor have we ever had any issues with fire in terms of us blocking fire lanes. And Chief Seltzer is very active and is always at our TRC meetings when we file these applications. So not to quote him, but to paraphrase Mr. Bannon, I believe his testimony was, we have a systematic approach. We have 4 or 5 things that we will implement if there is a parking problem. So our max day peak hour is commencement. That's when we hit maximum. And just lastly, Charlie noted on the 900 spaces that the zoning board gave us and that this board gave us a positive recommendation on, that was for the program, including the entire, for the basketball convocation center, which is not part of the program tonight. This is simply our field house.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I just wanted to talk to him. That's all. Is he available to talk to? Is there a number? Just call the Bryant to talk to him?
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't do that. No, I just can't do that.
Right,
Well, I just wanted to.
right. So, if there are questions, we certainly can relay them to Mr. Bannon. He has testified, this board did make a positive recommendation on parking to the zoning board. It was unanimous. In addition to that, the evening that Mr. Bannon testified, one of the, I think, the strenuous points that you had made had to do with reaching out to Fidelity regarding parking in the event that there were issues. We've done actually one better than that, which is that we're in the process of acquiring Fidelity location, which will have additional parking, which is the next application that's down here. So we've got parking covered completely, like a blanket. There are no issues regarding parking. There never were. You wanted us to go out to talk to Fidelity. We spoke to Fidelity. We're acquiring the Fidelity property, including their parking garage, including all the spaces that come with Fidelity.
That's across the street.
It's right across the street.
And then there was a discussion about potentially busing and
Shuttling
shuttles
people
and
in the event that it was needed. We didn't think it was needed. I don't think this board or the zoning board would have given us relief with nearly 1,000 parking spaces if they thought it was a legitimate issue or a genuine issue. But in addition to that, we are acquiring the Fidelity property with ample parking.
All right, thank you.
any other questions of board members? No. think we should open it to public hearing.
Yes, sir. I just want to confirm one item for Mr. Casale. This board and zoning board has carried over some conditions for the butters with respect to walkway setbacks. I don't know if this field house alone is going to actually address those conditions yet, but you know, as a board, you should carry over those conditions.
Yeah, there we go, right here.
Well, I'm not sure which one is your package.
I think it's this one here.
What granted conditions last year,
That's all that we need.
22,
Zoning board review on the first page.
then they came back. before
Several
you
pages to it.
this year Because things changed in terms of their, Mr. Vin's plan in terms of how they're improving the elderly. Right. So there's been a lot of conditions that were carried forward to satisfy the butters who seem very happy. I just want to make sure those conditions are
Carry over, yeah.
They were.
Yes, and we can and will stipulate to them. I believe that, I don't mean to put this, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is the area in question, that we would remove that portion of the access road, loom, seed it, and then push it as farther east as we could. And I believe we had doubled what was existing or what was originally proposed. All of those are correctly captured in those stipulations, and part of this application will continue that, moving that proposed driveway over 10 feet, and we received relief of 90 from the zoning board.
There's also fields over there that grass, I think, or.
Yes.
I'm not sure
See
if
if I can
that's what
show it.
as part of this plan.
Right, and so that grass field is actually right here. And what we had agreed to was, part of the systematic approach from this abandon was, it was 4 or 5 laydown areas that we could park there strategically. He asked that we allow us to go back to existing, pre-existing conditions, which we have, and will no longer park cars there. If they're not necessary, and it was something we can do.
And I would just add, we do meet and have met with the neighbors. We met prior to the original master plan that was submitted in 2022, but in addition to the revision that you heard just in August, we met with them as well. And we are continually addressing any issues that are raised by neighbors. And then Mr. Lepore was mentioned on John Bowery. He left after the meeting that took place in October, and he was happy. That was the last thing he told me when he left.
I think the solicitor's concern was making sure, as part of what's before the board today, that those prior conditions be included. Any other questions before we open for public hearing? It's 8 PM and we'll open for public hearing and comment. Anyone that would like to be heard, please come forward. With no one responding, we'll close the public hearing also at 8 PM. Discussion? No discussion? Do we have a motion?
Right, I will make a motion for, let me get the right thing here. For the preliminary plan for the Bryant University Field House. Just mentioning that the conditions and comments made by the zoning board of review continue to carry over with all the information as we continue on. And I don't know, I don't see any additions. Yeah,
December 7th, 2020,
December,
22 was the zoning board.
okay, December 7th, 2022.
There's also one from this year. I don't have the date in front of me. I think it was September. September 6, 2023 zoning board decision.
Okay, the zoning board decision from that date, time period also carries over.
Should we also have the planning board members, planners memorandum marked as Exhibit A?
Yes,
And
with all the recommendations.
and the statement of facts marked as Exhibit B?
Yes.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Hang on.
What do you mean?
Do we have a second of the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Okay, so that's a nay? Okay. The ayes have it. The next matter is Bryant University, 100 Salem Street, recommendation to zoning board of review on special use permit.
So Chris O'Connor, Blish and Kavanaugh, offices in Providence. And I represent Bryant University. So we have Ms. Casali here this evening is to address through a PowerPoint 100 Salem. This is the property that we just referenced in the prior application, or the application you just heard. It was also discussed in some length at the last planning board hearing, which would have been the master plan approval in August, and it was discussed as well at the zoning board hearing that took place on September 6th. So we're here tonight, not for master plan approval or preliminary, we're just seeking a recommendation from this board, a positive recommendation to the zoning board on what will ultimately be an application for a special use permit before the board. It's planned corporate development, PCD, not PD, right? Planned corporate. And it is permitted, it is a permitted use, college use. We're not doing anything to enlarge the building. We're simply, and you'll see through the PowerPoint, going in and repurposing what's there, the existing structure. So that said, we're asking for a positive recommendation. We anticipate that the zoning application will be filed in January and in time for the February zoning board hearing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Casali.
Again, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Joe Casali, registered professional engineer, 300 Post Road in Warwick. If I may, again, quickly, just the PowerPoint presentation, this being the Bryant campus, and that is 100 Salem. You all may know it as the 100 building for Fidelity. So when you look at the subject of building, you know, it's close to 250,000 gross square feet in terms of office space. It comes with an existing parking garage that houses 1,155 spaces. It also has surface parking for another 100 spaces. So roughly 1,250 spaces are coming with 100 Salem Street. Now, because we're in the planned corporate district, when we were before you last time, the initial use, which is just administrative offices, is allowed by right. We do not need to go before the zoning board. We are going to request a special use permit if we can put future academic use, specifically the College of Business Administration. And let me elaborate. So when you look at, this is the ground floor, while a lot of this is not the College of Business Administration, we do have some communication technologies. There's dining facilities, different student clubs, organizations. But then you'll see everything in orange is our College of Business, office, the labs, the classrooms. We have a Women's Leadership Institute. We have some grad studies on the first floor. And on the second floor, again, more College of Business predominantly. We do have some banquet seating and some event space. And then on the third and final floor, a lot of it will be more administration, different boardrooms and offices. So in terms of crossing, because that was always a question, the university has met with the Department of Transportation and town officials, including the town engineer and the town planner, and they evaluated various scenarios. We have an existing signalized intersection. We have an existing signalized crosswalk. Is it best to keep that there? They looked at a variety of elements. We considered pedestrian bridges. For various reasons, Department of Transportation and town officials and us the like, it wasn't the best because of all of the appurtenances that are in the state right-of-way. So they want to minimize that. We looked at a tunnel. Was that even feasible? Was a roundabout feasible because of the amount of traffic on the road? But I think all three entities ultimately agreed the safest way is, again, it's going to be a multi-approach. You're going to have people are going to take their personal vehicles over there. That's going to be first and foremost. Someone is going to get in their car and they're just going to drive across the street and they're going to park in the Salem Street. We will have shuttles and buses, university shuttles and buses that will take them over. But we want to give kids and students the ability to walk. And so you'll see a design very similar to this in which we have different areas of respite or reprieve where you'll cross the road to another island, to a final island, and then ultimately you'll have a meandering path up and into the woods. All of this will be done completely in conjunction and in consensus with DOT and with the town. But those are our plans in terms of 100 Salem. And as Attorney O'Connor said tonight, Mr. Chairman, we're just here tonight seeking a recommendation. We hope it to be a positive one to the zoning board for when we see them for our special use permit, hopefully in February.
Questions of the board?
Once again, I got one question, John. I hate this. It's the parking. So how many more people are going to go into that building? Students and stuff and everything. They're going to be using that existing parking spaces that's there for the overflow from the college.
Right.
Getting
So
confused with this park. We're going to save parking, but we're going to bring students in. Where is all this parking going on?
So I think we're talking about, say, different people. When you have students, let's say you have students that are going to live in the new student village that we're proposing. That if they're taking a class at Salem Street, they can move their car there. They can walk there and leave their car on campus, or they can take a shuttle. Either way, it's only one parking space displaced by that student. Where Salem Street will come into effect is, let's say we have commencement or a big basketball game, and we have a different group of people that are coming to the campus when the campus is not in typical school hours. We now have another 1,250 spaces that we can utilize at Salem Street and an existing shuttle service that's already running, that if we need it, and for the record, we do not believe that that is necessary unless there is an extreme situation of peak parking. But we now have that ability. So that was something you had asked for when we asked for the parking variance. And I think what we struggled on that evening was we have an agreement with Fidelity, but we didn't have one in writing. And what Attorney O'Connor is saying now, we're doing one better because now we're going to own the building. And so that will be ultimate control, is that it's not going to be an agreement that'll have some type of expiration. It'll be our building.
Can you bring up the overlay you had with the crossing?
Yeah.
My only comment, not that it bears particularly on the motion that's before us, but something perhaps to keep in mind on. College kids crossing Route 7, to me, is not a good idea. And whatever can be done to minimize college kids crossing Route 7 should be done. It doesn't affect, in my opinion, the motion that we're here before, but I see very bad things in what I do for a living in terms of automobile accidents. And to me, Route 7 with students crossing, unfortunately, with the given the speed of vehicles, sometimes students aren't necessarily paying attention as they may do when they're older in life. It's just a comment.
It's fair. If I may just follow up, Mr. Chairman, and not to minimize your statement, is if I didn't say this already, this will be a signalized crosswalk. So while it doesn't solve, I agree.
Of course, you design to try to do things to minimize, but irrespective of the perfect design,
yes,
unfortunately, college-age kids crossing a major roadway such as that.
They don't pay attention to them.
I
It's not
can't
just the
disagree.
college kids,
It's
the motorists as
yeah.
well on a road like that. So to the extent a design can minimize that type of aspect and focus heavily on shuttle, I rather have shuttles than allowing students to cross, to be honest with you. That's just, I think to me, that's a better approach to alleviate that. But that's neither here nor there, but given it's before us, I think it's an appropriate comment.
Sure.
Question. With having this property across the street, is the approach, if you have a commencement, a large event, is the approach going to be, everyone's going to know that's open for parking, or you're going to shift the parking to there if you feel like it's?
I think that's how Colonel Bannon does it. You know, in terms of the need, when it gets to the point that parking becomes restricted, that's when they'll open up Salem Street and keep those buses
Yeah, 'cause
running.
I think when a line forms turn left and everyone knows they can turn in there, you're going to create a lot of crossing there.
Exactly, and
If you can
we want to park them on our
organize a way
side of the
shift
road.
it to that if you had to, then that would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair statement.
Joe, how far up does the 3 lanes go? Does the 3 lanes go all the way up or just?
I think they go to, let me see if I can see from this aerial. No, that's not a good aerial.
It looks consistent, right?
I don't believe it goes all the way up past that bend though, and that's just from recollection.
Okay. Because I was going the other way. I was thinking whether or not you would have like rent a bike or rent a scooter for the kids to basically zip up and back, but that may be more dangerous, but.
Yeah, you know, we were always talking to, you know, you want to walk them against traffic. Does that mean we're going to build 2 walking trails? No, we'll probably just put it and meander it off of the paved right-of-way to try to separate the ever-bright college kids from the traffic pattern.
Did the Department of Transportation, did they not like the tunnel idea?
I don't think DOT wants any infrastructure in their right-of-way if they can avoid it. Because ultimately, paper is as good as, you know, and now we have, you know, appurtenances in that right-of-way, and it's just, you know, their traffic engineers, I think, pushed hard to have surface-mounted signalized crossings.
Okay, any other questions?
Shuttles are the way to go.
Don't disagree. Any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to make a positive recommendation to the zoning board of review for a special use permit for 100 Salem Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Okay.
We have a second on his motion.
Yeah, boy, it's getting late. Before we begin that, can we have a second of the motion? Thank you, Catherine.
Second.
And again, all in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor? Charlie? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year. We'll see you all in January.
Yes.
Merry Christmas. We recovered. We were wasting a lot of time, but we recovered.
Yeah.
We did. We did. We made a better pace.
Okay, next we have review of proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. Want to hear from the solicitor on these, or?
You will hear from me briefly, and then you may hear also from your councilman or councilwoman. They are both here. I am filling in for Mike Phillips tonight, so mainly what's before you tonight are a couple of amendments that address some of the new requirements that relate to the state laws that are changing regarding land use subdivisions and major land developments. And also, one other item relates to the zoning districts. Last month, I believe you had reviewed a zoning district being a zoning classification for battery storage. You are now also looking at a zoning addition for a section called wind energy facilities, which is proposed before you to be a no in every zone. I talked to Planner Phillips today to discuss it, and the reason is under the new state laws that are coming into effect in January, in any town zoning ordinance, if you have a use that's by special use permit, just like you heard, if you don't have any objective criteria for the board to decide that special use, the law now says it's permitted by right. Your town departments are quite stressed taking care of all of these new amendments that just are coming online in the last few months, and to put together an objective criteria immediately for this classification, because you can see there's various types of green energy developing. So in order to cover town's perspective, you have to make it a no, so that the planning department, zoning departments, or whoever can put together some objective criteria for that.
What's the definition of a wind energy facility?
I am not sure. If you give me a minute.
That being, like, for example, say a home wanted to have a vertical rotated windmill, would that ban that?
I think one of my other emails may have some sort of definition of it. If you give me a minute, I'll try to find it if my phone's still alive, but I'll defer to the councilman.
This was broached years back, and they wanted to put a facility up off of Lime Rock. But as it came to be, they couldn't do it because of the FAA rules for planes. So that prevented that from happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, on the other amendment.
Could you imagine a big windmill by North
Yes,
Central Airport?
Michael.
I have one question for the,
Somebody.
So by saying no in all zoning districts, is that like a placeholder to give, it's permitted to give us time? So that's all covered in the new state law, that we have time to develop criteria?
Yes.
So that's a placeholder.
Yes, it works as a placeholder. I think last month this board, I wasn't here last month, but I believe last month you also adopted some amendments to zoning to make certain uses no in various zones. So it's the same thing. It's a placeholder until a lot of these zoning ordinances are reviewed in more detail and objective criteria can be created.
And
But
this is a recommendation from the board that'll eventually go to the town council for their review and.
Yes, these amendments,
It's on our, we scheduled a public hearing for it, and it's on, going to be on our agenda either the next.
January 9th.
In that last recommendation for energy storage, I think we allowed it in a couple of districts, didn't we?
Because I thought it was discussed that we couldn't say no on all of them. We couldn't say no to,
Yeah.
we couldn't say no all across the board. That's what we were told last, and I pointed out that, exterior movies are all no. There are certain things that are no right across, but for some reason, the battery storage, we couldn't say no all across.
So I will, in part, tell you that, as you know, I recuse myself on the battery energy one. So I am not going to go into any specific detail, but what I will tell you from what I understood that concept, that comment comes from, is from the planner regarding a Massachusetts Attorney General's opinion, wherein the Attorney General's office had ruled in a decision that the town had passed a zoning ordinance that didn't permit it in any zone. So that concept of no anywhere, my understanding, if that's what you were told last month, potentially originates from that Attorney General opinion.
Did the town council have an opportunity to take up that issue with the?
January, those zoning amendments?
Yes.
That's
on January.
That's all for January 9th. There was not a council meeting this past Tuesday, right? So, and the council's not meeting the first Tuesday because it's January 2nd. So the first hearing for it will be January 9th. Therefore, these amendments will also be before the council at that time with your recommendations either way.
Can I ask one more question, please? So,
Fire away, member.
So the other thing that's before this board is for housing, isn't it?
Yes.
And that, from what I understand, what's before us is being required by the Rhode Island State Legislature. It's already law or going to be law, and that what's put forward to this board tonight, there is no wiggle room in regards to density bonuses and other such, that is the.
There is in part. These are proposals. The density bonus is not wiggle room. The density bonus is specifically by state statute. The qualification where inclusionary zoning begins, the statute reads, it has to take place with a project where anything higher than 10 units, on the state law it says anything with 10 units or more, you should have inclusionary zoning. Our town regulations for years have put the inclusionary zoning at 6, so that stays the same.
Okay.
The percentage of inclusionary zoning is up to
25 now, isn't it?
Well, I believe
The state law, I think, is going to put it up to 25. But we want to put it up to 40.
Okay, I think my
the
question.
state law says not less than 25% inclusionary zoning in a project.
Do you have any concern with the way we voted on the other matter, I think where we didn't vote no to everything versus the request here to vote no on everything?
I recuse myself from answering that question.
All right.
Say no and let the fight happen.
Yeah, that's one way to look.
Michael Ionati, Town Council Vice President. Right now, our percentage of low and moderate income housing is at 5.24%. That was as of September. We need another 389 low and moderate income units to reach our 10%, which would allow us to do away with the comprehensive permit process on which we are now, in my opinion, suffering where we can't, where all these constraints are put on us, on project locations, the zoning goes out the window, et cetera. So the town planner has estimated that we'll get to that point by 2060, and I think that's too long. I think that we'll have a very different town by then. And I think the reason for that is with 25% low and moderate income in a project, let's say it's a 100-unit project, we only get a net of about 15 units because we keep adding on to the total housing. So that's why we don't get anywhere very quickly with that. And so I've estimated that we'll probably need, thousands of units to reach that goal. And, maybe we won't recognize our town after that happens. So I think if, the developers are getting all of these benefits, they're getting all these extra density bonuses, they're getting, in the new law that takes effect on January 1st, they're getting, a 15% variance in setbacks. They're getting to do away with, in the comprehensive permit process, to do away with the master plan review. I think if they're getting all these benefits to help them build affordable housing, I think that the town should get something back, and I think we should get more affordable housing out of it. And when we say affordable housing, these are still expensive houses. I think the market rate housing, I don't think most of the residents that live in this town could afford it, to afford their children. A lot of people would like to have their children stay in the town and live here, but I don't think they could afford the houses here to buy them today with the prices the way they are. So we need to have more affordable housing in our town, and I think the way to do it, if a builder is going to build, a project of more than 6 units, I think it's only fair that at least 40% be affordable. And the way I came up with the 40, I actually wanted it to be 50 at one point, but then I looked, and under the new law, they now get a density bonus of 9 units instead of the 5. Well, it used to be 7 on 50%. Now it's going up to 9. So, that wouldn't, we'd probably end up with all apartments if we went up that high and we had that kind of density bonus. So I think 40 is a good number. I think it's a fair number. And I think, if we're all serious about creating more affordable housing, I think that's the way to go. If we're going to build all this housing, if we're going to build housing, let's build our affordable housing and make progress toward our 10% goal.
Question.
Catherine?
How do we incorporate all these accessory family dwellings that people are putting up and renting out? Those aren't incorporated into the total number.
I don't think the planner has incorporated them into it yet. I think it's a big project to do so, to try to locate them all, and you don't get a full unit credit for an ADU. I think you only get a partial credit, about, half? You get half a unit. So he hasn't put all of those in, but I don't know how many there are.
Drive around, you see them.
Yeah. So we're going to ask him to do that as a project. He's kind of been inundated because of all the changes, trying to get those all together. It's a huge project. So in January 1st, is right around the corner. So, yeah.
So part of that comment about the ADUs being part of your LMI requirement, I had talked to Rhode Island Housing, I believe it was, because I was involved in looking into all of this. The concept behind that ADU, that accessory dwelling unit, is the hope was people would put these up so that it would allow, they could rent it for LMI. But the person that's willing to put it up has to want to make it an LMI unit. There's no requirement for them to do so. So if they come to the town and they say, I want to build my accessory dwelling unit, and the town says we have a right to do it there, that's it. They can walk out the door and build it. So it doesn't necessarily, just because you bill it, it's not required that it becomes an LMI unit. The person has to then say, okay, I will make it, and there'll have to be some sort of incentive for the person to do that. Otherwise, they're just going to rent it to their children's friend who doesn't need it, or to their cousin, or me, who doesn't need it today, for instance, whoever it may be. So that calculation hasn't really even begun yet, because pretty much all the AD units that have ever been granted by this town were simply for your elderly parents over 62, or that new law that came in, they had to be over 62, you could get one, or your in-laws in any fashion. So it's only recently that's been invoked. So the calculation really hasn't even started because it hasn't been much yet for that. So there has to be something else that'll take place for the person to want to do it.
Well, some towns, you actually have to register them and pay a fee every year.
Correct.
And that's how they keep track of what's going on.
Yes, and I believe with
Mary
the
Hazard does that.
ADUs in the town you had I think the town sent something out that you had to certify the person who was living there was still living there. I don't know the process of how that took place, but those were never based on an LMI qualification. So if we know where all those ADU units exist in the town, you still have to go to that person and say, are you willing to make this an LMI unit? And it's up to that person to say yes or no. There's no mandate they have to.
It's similar to the, the regular housing units. We probably far exceed the 10% if you want to just look at, whether there are affordable units, but they have to have the deed restriction in them to qualify under the state as an LMI, which, I think we should work to try to change that so we can, count more of what we have toward our 10% goal.
What about like Section 8 housing? There's a lot of apartment houses in the Esmond area that are Section 8 approved. Those don't get counted?
No.
Your Section 8 houses, that was always the first problem, is people thought LMI, low and moderate income, meant Section 8, and they're two different things. The Section 8 housing has a qualification through like federal and state funds, where it's a subsidy for that person to be able to stay there. The LMI unit is not. It's based on the person's income as compared to the median income in your town, where they meet 80% of the median income, up to 120% of the income, with this whole calculation done by the moderating company for those LMI units. So it's completely different.
Why couldn't they be considered both? They'd be meeting both definitions.
You should have asked the attorney that was here on the matter before Brian.
Well, I mean, as a practical matter,
Yes,
right?
correct.
It really does. Why should?
Yes, you could. I mean, that's a concept
I
that
know
could
they're
be.
considered something separate, but they have qualities of both.
They do, but that's not how I don't know why, because when LMI started, but you always hear the same example. The young police officer or the young teacher who won't qualify for Section 8, but yet can't get into the town of Smithfield but wants to. And that's what the LMI unit was for. That's the example they give. So the comparison to Section 8, though it makes sense to say we're allowing people that need income assistance in some way to live in this town, is there, but that wasn't the concept of how they came up with it, as far as I know.
Question on the account, for example, Sand Trace isn't built yet, but maybe 160, it's built out 20% online. Are those numbers in the account right now? It's not under the CO on it, or?
No, they're not in the count until they are, built and the deed restriction is put on. Then they go in our count.
Both numbers go up.
Because, just because a project is approved, things happen and, sometimes all the units don't get built, so.
Can somebody tell me the difference between the accessory dwelling units that this town has been allowing for some time now and people are taking advantage of, and this discussion in the Providence Journal and other places, news was reported that the legislature is talking about something called a granny flats that they want to take up at the next legislative session? What's the difference? And they speak of it in the same breath as LMI.
Sure.
I don't know what they're talking about either.
I didn't see the article or read about it.
It's
Flat,
yeah. Yeah.
The
I'm just assuming it's the same thing, but the legislature seems to want to do something for allowing those to be built. But we've been doing that for.
So your ADU units were always tied to your relative. You could only rent it to your relative.
We did away with that.
They did away with that.
We did, yeah,
So
last year.
They did away with that, and then they also added in, I think, 2018 or 19, they changed it to, you could have somebody over 62. I don't know if it had to be a relative or not, but they started to modify it for that purpose. For 62 isn't old anymore, especially at my age.
Bless your heart.
But that was the concept, is where they were coming from. And now it's going further to say it's just
Now they have all ages in there.
all ages. No, and it doesn't have to have a relationship.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Just about the wind. I'm sure this is Rachel Toppy, Town Council. I'm sure you guys know this already, but this is, the wind is just a continuation of our efforts to be proactive as far as, protecting the residential areas, the residents, commercial, all the natural, lovely areas in Smithfield. So it's really important we get ahead of the 8 ball on this and similar things. So thanks, guys.
Mr. Chair, to answer your question, I texted the planner, but I haven't heard from him back to see. I didn't see a definition in the document he gave me, so I can't specifically give you a final answer on that.
Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
One last question, I'm sorry. So we don't foresee any kind of pitfalls in going to 40% on the inclusionary?
Well, the only thing I'm thinking of is, maybe some developers won't want to build a project because it's 40%.
And there's
I mean,
there's no.
I don't know if that's a pitfall, though. Depends on
Yeah,
how you look at it.
Getting at it, there's no back alley to density bonuses on that. That's strictly something that goes with the comprehensive permit.
Yeah, this does not go with the comprehensive
this is
permit.
inclusionary.
This is our inclusionary
Okay.
unit ordinance. So
Just-
all projects, whether under comprehensive permit or not, that are 6 units or more, would have to be a 40% LMI.
Would have to be 40, did you say?
40,
Yeah.
40%.
Would that include a subdivision with homes that are totally separate? How about a subdivision with the separate builders buying land?
When the subdivision comes before the board, it's granted at that time. So you could have 6 developers that come in to develop 6, and the town has to control or identifies what units will be the LMI units. And then it has to be, whoever buys the project or who's buying the project has to be worked out. I had one in Gloucester, and the specific lot was identified. And their Gloucester regulations state that it has to be built in the middle of the project. And it had to be worked out between the people that were selling the lots when it would be done. So it gets, someone's buying them.
If we get this, you make this a rule, right, can it be appealed? The problem we have, mine looking at like lately, is rules are out there, they get appealed, they just shit can and go over it. How can we stop the appealing of that? If somebody says, I can't afford to give you 40%, I got a hardship, and I'm not appealing it, the zoning board goes, oh, wow, yeah, okay, here you go. How can we put a stop to it?
Well, I mean, anybody can appeal pretty much anything. That's why we have such excellent attorneys representing us at all times. Yeah.
Well, what, I think you're asking two things. One is, if the council passes the regulation, it becomes your regulation in town. So when the project comes before this board, the person cannot appeal, he doesn't want to do 40% because he's agreed to come before this board with a project under the regulations. So from that standpoint, it doesn't get appealed. If he wants to argue he has a hardship and can't do it, then that concept he has to take to an appeal to Superior Court and say this is a hardship to me.
Well, we're gonna make some news tonight if we go with this.
I have a concern, and you tell me if it's on the mark or off the mark. People who move into Smithfield envision living in a certain kind of environment. Is it in the best interest of the citizens of Smithfield to substantially increase the population density in the town, which I believe going to 40 would do? The additions of these projects in town.
No, it would not increase. It may decrease, more likely to decrease.
How so?
Well, because
I'm not trying to be
I think it's more, going to be more difficult to build a development that has 40% LMI financially. I mean, that's an obvious thing.
I
But
agree
we
with
are going to get these projects
agree.
regardless. So I'm saying that if we get a project like this, let's make sure that we get units that are affordable in the project, more units that are affordable. Now, you're saying you're going to get, are you saying you're going to get bigger projects to cover that? You know, you can only put so much on a piece of property because the densities are set by ordinance. So, you know, that's what you'll get. So I see this helping to decrease the number of units, because I've estimated we're going to need something like a couple of thousand units just to get to our 10% goal. And we don't want to see that.
Wouldn't it just, I'm sorry, you don't. Wouldn't it, I mean, would this have not a backlash, but a backlash of just increasing increasing the cost of the non-LMI units? The builder's gonna make their profit. So instead of whatever it is, $200 a square foot for one, you know, it may end up getting $250 a square foot to compensate for the dollar he can only get for that. So I know that, and you can see it happening right around, this development right around the corner from me, that those houses went up for like, they were originally selling for 600,000. Somebody just sold and bought, so obviously somebody bought for 900, and that was only like 3 years ago. I mean, all I could see is these numbers keep on climbing, and then when we're putting something like that to make the project pro forma work, they basically have to increase the price of the house, of the non-LMI units, to make it work.
Well, in that case, the people with the money will pay a little more so that some of the other folks can afford to stay in Smithfield.
But that just adds, but then the comps, then everybody's in the neighborhood, those comps just keep on climbing. That it'll push all of us out.
Well,
because
you'll have
just-
the LMIs would kind of offset that, wouldn't it? Or did they not put the LMIs in the comp? I'm not sure how they, you know, the real estate
I don't know
agents
if
do
they
that.
would comp that.
But I think, you know, I think the prices are going up anyway, and, you know, I don't think we have a lot of control over it right now, you know, and, you know, so, But I think we have to do something to get a handle on this problem because, you know, the former chairman of the board once said recently that pretty much all of our applications now are under the comprehensive permit process because it's such a lucrative thing. So I think that, you know, we have to try something to get some control over this. And this is the only thing I can think of to do, especially when the legislature keeps adding on to the benefits for the developers to, you know, to bring these comprehensive permit process.
What's like East Greenwich doing? I mean, what are all these other towns doing that are they just saying, I don't care?
Well, I know that, you know, we're trying to work through the League of Cities and Towns to try and, you know, change this 10% formula a little, maybe come up with maybe a regional plan or something to that effect, but I don't know where any of it's going to go. So I'd like to, you know, move quickly to try to, you know, protect us as best we can. We can't control what goes on outside of these borders.
I'm just wondering that there are other communities that are more affluent than Smithfield. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can it hurt to try? If you just reverse it.
Right. I don't know if, do you know of another community that has 40% on their inclusionary? Yeah. So.
You're not getting me.
And so from the board's perspective, you're making recommendations to the town council. So your recommendations can be how you want to make your recommendations. It still goes to the council for their consideration.
It's ultimately their decision.
Right. But you're still-
Irrespective of what we think.
Right, but your recommendations go to the council so that the council members can evaluate what their planning board thinks of these regulations. So recommend some in part, that's all.
Well, how about we take up the wind issue first? Because I think that one most likely will have less resistance than the LMI issue. Any discussion on the recommendation to change the zoning ordinance in terms of wind energy facilities to ends throughout?
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. All not in favor? The ayes have it in terms of the wind energy facility recommendation. Next, discussion with respect to the recommendation to increase LMI from 20 to 40% regarding construction involving 6 or more dwellings. Discussion?
I have one concern, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps one of the council people can chime in on this. Might a pitfall be that if they go if an applicant comes in going the conventional route with the inclusionary shift costs and decide to come in with a comp application, comp permit?
As a what, please?
As a comp permit. I'm going to be forced to do 40%. Maybe I'll go and, you know, go the state permit route, do my required LMI, and get my density bonus too. So would that discourage them going the conventional route and then go the state permit route? It's just,
Well, if they're all going to be forced under the new state law to do at least 25% on any project over 6, then they're already in the comp permit range anyway, so they could do that anyway.
The question is, does this amendment requiring an increase of LMI to 40%, is that consistent with a comprehensive plan? irrespective of statutory requirements, et cetera. I'm not quite sure. I understand the intent and the point, but
I think it's actually,
to go to 40?
Right, your comprehensive plan in general requires that you meet the state mandates regarding LMI in the first instance, so from that standpoint, mechanisms to meet that is.
But we have other points that cover the comprehensive plan other than LMI issues.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting at.
But, yeah, I can't think off the top of my head anything that would discourage it. Yeah, it's just turning up the throttle. I'm sure the town planner is going to be at your council meeting if he has any objections to it. It'd be interesting to see if he does.
Is there any reason not to make it more incremental? Make it from 6 to, I don't know, call it 15 units at 35%, and then anything after 15. I'm not sure what the average development size is in the town, if it's.
Or make it conditioned upon her hitting a certain target percentage and thereafter reducing it. So if your goal is in part to increase to meet that state mandate, once you get there, do you still want to continue this into the future? Maybe not.
You don't have, once the actual 10% LMI is met, the town does not have to.
But the ordinance is in place and says, let's say it's met in 1 year. It's never going to happen, just for our argument's sake. Let's say it's met next year from today. All projects going forward, year after today, is going to still be 40%. And is that something we want?
That's a good question, because I'm not thinking of that issue, but I'm.
But that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking.
Which is, yeah, your word, you would have to adjust your ordinance at that point, because then the next 3 builders that come in that don't have to do anything.
Yeah, it would still have to be at 10%. It would have to be at a minimum of 10% just to keep the math working.
There's gotta be some sort of requirement that 10%.
Oh, we're in a hole again.
If three are built, some of those are 6, then you have to get at least 2 more LMI to make sense. There'll be a calculation that would have to be figured.
You're still talking 25, 30 years. I mean, you're still talking a long way out.
I don't, yeah.
The reason I don't want to go incremental is because it's going to take so long to get there anyway. And I want to keep the number of units down to a minimum that we need to get there. That's the bottom line here.
Then we should keep it the way it is then, at 25%.
No, we should not, because we'll never get there that way.
So what?
I mean, we won't get there till 2060.
At
least we have a shot at it. We have a shot at it this way. And it shows that we number one, we want to make our homes affordable to our citizens. And number two, we want to reach our 10% goal quickly so we can keep control over our zoning, which is so important. If we want to keep Smithfield the way we like it, we have to keep control of our zoning.
How do the other council members feel? It's like a short discussion.
Well, I have one here. That's it. I haven't pulled them. I had a meeting with, I didn't just bring this by myself here. I had a meeting with the town solicitor, the town planner, the town manager, and this was discussed, and there was no objection to it. So I can tell you that much.
Yeah, we're losing, we are, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're losing more and more control. We're losing control of our town more and more over the ensuing years because of this issue. I mean, it's, that's right, John, yeah.
Right.
A little bit more and more, a little bit, a bite here, bite here, bite here, and now it's just accelerating. And
The problem really is that we keep legislating these mechanisms. And believe me, I don't want to sound like a Milton Friedman free market economist, right? But we're trying to legislate mechanisms to do what free market economics takes care of in every sphere of our economy. And it's just not possible, in my opinion, to do this and and retain the quality of life that we have. Now, I'm the rookie here, or one of them, right? Persuade me otherwise. I'm not trying to be contentious, but I've lived in this town since I was 5, and I don't like what it's become. Density-wise, the real estate market needs a massive correction because of prices going out of sight. We've lost the rural nature of our town, and the state is legislating control away from the bodies within the town.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's the whole reason for this. That's the whole reason. And, you know, we've had this policy for now 20 years, this statute, the comprehensive permit process.
Right.
And I think it's been a total failure as far as creating affordable housing. But I think it's been a great success in helping developers make more money. And so,
Instead of building 9 houses, they build 10.
Right.
They just lose 10,000 on another, but when you have reality,
Yeah.
they make 85,000 on
so what the state legislature did last year was they doubled down on the failed policy, and so, you know, they keep whittling away. This year, they'll probably try to take more of our authority away, you know, as a municipality to control our zoning. So, you know, we have to have some response. I think this is a reasonable response because it shows that we are in favor of affordable housing. We're serious about it. We actually want to do something about it here, rather than play games like the state has been doing with the LMI statute.
Hold your bumper sticker second, I'm just thinking, as the taxpayers can see what you're proposing.
Well, I could tell you from, you know, we knocked on over 2,000 doors in this campaign. And I can tell you what people are concerned about, and they're concerned about in this town exactly what Mr. Nanny just said about keeping the town the way it is. They think the town is a well-run town, but they're fearful of losing the character of the town, losing the things that make it great, the trails, the open space, and they're concerned about all the traffic and all the development.
Do you think those same people would be in favor of this amendment?
I think so, yes.
I don't agree.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't see it. And my mind isn't closed. I'm looking for more information to change my mind, but right now, I just don't see it.
So you're saying you think this idea of any percentage make this work is a forced method?
Yeah.
Really can't- And I wouldn't disagree with that, you know, I think 40 helps us, but.
In terms
I
of
don't know,
population
stop that
density, in terms of housing values, and I mean, look at the gridlock. Every single one of us had to put up with just to drive here tonight. I don't even go through the center of Greenville anymore. I cut through Windsor Avenue, and I go from West Greenville to Providence through Johnston because I don't want to deal with the center of town. And we're going to make this like an urban environment if we add more density.
We're not adding the density, the state is.
Huh?
The state is adding the density, not us.
Yeah, the changes.
We can control some of this open space with the zoning boards, in my opinion, the zoning boards, and I keep saying, I'll say I'm blue in the face every time I see something like that. Just throws a wrench into anything we want to stop them on.
That's an issue for reps and senators to contend with.
We gotta figure out how to stop this character is coming, like I said, and to me, I think it's Gotta start with a set of plans that we stick to. Adopt and stick to, that's it, same, plain and simple. And I'm willing to try anything, you wanna try, when you think everybody can do that, you know, and you can not hurt anybody, why not? Right.
I think at this point, we have to try something, you know, and I think I think that's the way it will work. I don't think it'll result in more units. I don't see how I don't see it.
I think so. Maybe I'm just a rookie, but that's my feeling impressionistically. And like I say, I'm willing to consider more information.
Mathematically, we're not going to get there with 20%.
That's pretty
Well, you're
much
gonna get,
it.
you're gonna get there with 40%.
Good.
You're gonna get there with 40%.
Hey, you know, these laws come down on me. I'm going to show them that, oh, okay. You want to get serious about it? We'll get serious about it. Okay? The controls being taken out of my hands, our hands. Right?
It is.
So if that's not going to change, then we got to do what we can to make changes here. And
I think it
so
works.
I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I'm willing to try it.
Okay, do we have a motion?
How's it written on the, I'm sorry.
Well,
There you go. Under inclusionary housing. Move to make a positive recommendation to the town of Smithfield Council of Smithfield. We make a positive recommendation on the changes to section 5.10 inclusionary zoning. And .10 E and F. No, yes, E and F.
per the date of that,
Pardon?
per the date of the letter.
Oh, yeah, nice. Per the date of the letter from the town planner to the planning board dated December 18th, 2023.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All not in favor?
Nay.
There's also,
The ayes have it.
I don't know if you address the amendment to subsection N, M and N, which removes the fee in lieu. To remove that.
Yeah, that's another thing we put in there. We want to remove the ability of the developer to pay a fee instead of actually build the housing. Because what happens with that is it goes into a fund, and then we have to have the housing authority partner with another entity to find land and build the housing. We're never getting anywhere with that. I mean, that's just a boon for the developers to get out of having to build affordable housing. There's also a section in there that the builder can donate land to get out of building the affordable housing. We want to get rid of that also.
I thought we were told that we couldn't get rid of that. I thought we tried to, if the state said,
That came up a year ago.
Yeah, I just read the state statute on that.
Yep.
The statute said we may allow fees in lieu of.
yeah,
So
get
if
rid
we
of
may, well, we may not also.
Okay, I'm all for, yeah.
I'll make another motion.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve changes as recommended under 5.10 sections N and M, and L, M, and N. L, M, and N.
Second?
Well, actually, I was gonna, I can comment after we second if you want, or I can say something.
No, we take a comment.
Will this affect the ability, the option of, to make the LMI an off-site location from the, because they can do that, and I think that can be a productive thing.
That would not affect that. That's, we just discussed that. That's in another section, and that is allowed.
Okay, good.
Section L.
Okay, I'm sorry, it would allow it or would not allow it?
It would still allow off-site.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
All right, good.
So did I cover everything?
J has one edit that is to make fee and lieu consistent.
Okay.
The last sentence of section J.
J, and what about K? J, K, L, M, N.
Yes.
All right, let's do this one more time. Okay. Move to approve the recommended changes under section 5.10, inclusionary zoning, that this board makes positive recommendations on the changes for section J, inclusionary housing agreement and preliminary plan, K, timing of construction and assurance, subsections 1 and 2, L, M, and N, dealing with off-site construction of inclusionary units in lieu of fees and donation of land in lieu of housing production. All right.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All not in favor?
Nay.
Okay. The ayes have it. Last is, what is this, Mr. Solicitor?
Yeah, I do not know. I spent time with Mr. Phillips today, and we both didn't even discuss this item of soil erosion.
Oh, yeah, I know it. Yeah, so there's, the soil erosion committee is supposed to have 3 from planning board and 2 from conservation. And we're down to myself and Peter Pear, and I think there might not be anyone else left here. So I think it's a recruiting effort to see if anyone's interested in.
Has to be 3 from the planning board?
Yeah, 3 from planning, 2 for conservation. So, and the meetings are an hour before these start, so it's 5 o'clock. At this point, we have about 2 or 3 a year, so.
Do we have any takers?
You're gonna call for nominations.
Can we continue this to the next,
Yes. We can put it on the agenda for next month.
so that,
Further discussion.
so that the powers could maybe influence some members to take the positions?
Didn't enough free
Okay.
time of the
To continue it to.
Yeah.
All in favor? Second? We have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All not in favor? The ayes have it. Adjourn.